The college football season is very quickly approaching, and we are here with our 16 flag plants. Our final call. These are our guys, John. We're sticking out our chests. We're calling it, and we're doing it in a fun way here. We're showing our actual exposure. These are our highest rostership, our most heavily owned players. We've talked about a lot of guys through this offseason. So John's pulled his 6, 2 for each position, or his 8, 2 for each position. I pulled my 8, 2 for each position. John, before we get into it, I just want to let folks know this will be our final episode before the college football season starts, but you're going to want to make sure you're subscribed. In season, we will once again be running back our weekly college fantasy football waiver wire episode. And this year, a little bit new. Folks have been joining us all off season. We appreciate y'all. We see you coming in. You want more CFF content. We will be doing our weekly plays of the week later on in the week, so probably about midweek there. And we're going to have a set of, 7, 8 guys for you each week, but we are also going to have double that, so an additional set of players, 6 or 7 players each week, just for the Rookie Big Board patrons. So make sure to head on over to rookiebigboard.com. Make sure you're subscribed here because we are helping you win these college fantasy football championships, not just in the offseason, but week by week as well. So, John, before we get into your guys, why don't you talk a little bit of process here? We're saying these are our flag plants, our most exposed players, but there's always a little bit of nuance in the process.
Absolutely. And we wanted to do this show to provide our viewers with players that you and I like. Now, that does not mean you go out and draft them in the first 3 rounds of your CFF draft. And anyone who's done CFF for a long time knows that you win these leagues or these drafts late in the drafts, mid-rounds, like after round 8. Depending, I do up to 30 rounds sometimes. But let's say you do a 20-round draft. After round 8 is very important. So I've done 20 drafts already, Matt, and that includes Yahoo, Best Ball, Power 4, all FBS, season-long drafts. And what I did earlier this week, I went through all my rosters and I started counting players. And I eliminated any player who was like a top 10-round pick. I'm not going to give someone, maybe someone falls in the 8th or 9th, right? But I'm not going to give you a player in the top 24 at their position overall. So I chose players, and you did also, that we like, that we're drafting later, that gives you depth at your roster and might actually become a starter by week 2 or 3, or if you have injury. So that's how we came about this process, Matt.
All right, well, let's go ahead and get into it here, John. So we're going to start with the quarterbacks. You've identified first up JKS, Jaron Kiwi Sagapotele, out of Cal. 50% rostership, John. And this is a guy we've talked a little bit about this offseason in our quarterback rankings, but you can see here we have our rankings available over at rookiebigboard.com. He's quarterback 26 in our consensus. His ADP is quarterback 36. So you can see here where we feel that there's value with the Cal quarterback.
Without question, Matt. And what I want viewers to understand, when you and I have been recording all these shows, we've been doing live drafts, we've been building underdog teams together. We competed against each other in a live Power 4 draft on Yahoo. We play against each other in a bunch of leagues, including the Kings Classic. And when I give advice, Matt, I am not doing it for the viewer without believing in it. So I want everyone to know I love JKS this year. I'm probably over-invested, Matt, at 50%. And it's funny, I realized very early in the process when you and I began this sometime around May, I had been doing drafts as far back as March. And to me, he was an easy smash in round 14, round 15. He's obviously moved up ADP recently, but I still love him tremendously. And Matt, you know what's finally interesting? The national media has been on Cal. If you've been watching national media recently, the Golden Bears are kind of like a sleeper in the ACC, and a lot of people are talking about JKS, which was not happening even 6 weeks ago, Matt.
Absolutely. And you've got Sam Levitt on here too. And this is one I feel like he's really gotten lost in the sauce, right? There's a lot of quarterbacks really compact in this round or in this range of ADP, which is he's at QB 14, right? These are guys that they go on that run in like round 3, round 4, right? And so you've been taking on Sam Levitt, which I'm really interested in, John. This is somebody who I don't personally have a ton of exposure to. It's not because I dislike him. But you have 35% rostership. So you're ready to see him at the helm of this Lane Kiffin offense.
I absolutely am, my friend. I'm a believer in Lane Kiffin. I'm a believer in his quarterbacks. They are very good fantasy producers over the years. We talk about the LSU wide receiver room, and there's not really one wide receiver who stands out. Now, I do think Trey'Dez Green is the star, the tight end. And we've talked about that throughout the summer, right, Matt? So I think Green's the star, but he is surrounded, Levitt, by 3 or 4 other really good wide receivers. The running back room is deeper than people think. There might not be a star, but I have a feeling that Lane Kiffin is going to find a back at LSU, at Baton Rouge. So I like it. Well, what does that tell me? I like the system. I like the coach. I believe in the talent. Sam Levitt is coming at such a nice value, Matt, and the reports are shining bright out of Baton Rouge on how well Sam Levitt is doing in training camp. I'm all in, my friend.
All right, so I've identified 2 quarterbacks here, again, with a bit of a skew of ADP here, and that is first up, Steve Angeli. You know, John, this was a really helpful process for me to get into myself, right? You know, really reflecting on who have I taken a lot. Some guys I know that I'm getting a lot of exposure to, and then some guys I'm sitting here and going, oh, I have 30% exposure to Steve Angeli. And why have I been targeting this offseason? We're a bit higher on him. He's a consensus about 10 spots higher here in our rankings than ADP has him. And I like Angeli. You look at just the first 4 games of last season, which is really his only sample size as a starter, a full-time starter at least. And for Syracuse, he looked really impressive. 10 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 62% completion rate. And he had 1,300 passing yards. And that was against Tennessee, Clemson, Connecticut, Colgate. Like, for Syracuse, for the first 4 games of the season, that's a pretty tough set of opponents here for Angeli as a first-time starter to come out and look so good. So, Syracuse has the wide receiver back now, Ross Simmons, right?
Yeah.
He came back very late, so that's a nice little bump to Angeli. The reports are that he should be healthy. I believe he's on track here to start the beginning of the season.
From what I see, he's on track.
Yeah, he's on track. So I think that's somebody worth going for here. And then Devin Dampier, of course, going much earlier in drafts. I think, in that Sam Levitt range, maybe a little bit earlier than that Sam Levitt range. Devin Dampier, for me, it's the floor that comes with his rushing ability. That's why I've been prioritizing him early. We've talked about this a lot, John. You don't want to wait too long to go for your quarterback here and miss out on the early runs. And I just feel like Dampier here, he's been going in that sweet spot here earlier on in drafts. But let's get into the running backs here. And this is where I think we really start digging deep here. And let's start with Osman Chroma. I have to tell you, John, at least from the Devy perspective, the Rookie Big Board Discord has been hyping up Chroma like all offseason. Like, folks are ready for it. You've got 55% exposure to him here. You expect him to be the lead back here, Wisner as the clear number 2?
Oh, without question in my mind. And I've been following those Florida State, what do they call them? Fan boards? That's not the right word. Message boards. And I've been, there's a lot of good Seminole people on X who talk about him. And the coach is starting to talk about him, Mike Norvell, more and more. And I want everyone to understand, yes, I like him. Matt, most of the time, he's my 5th running back. Yes. And why I have him at 55% in those big best ball leagues where I'm drafting 30-man rosters, he ends up as my 6th running back. Like I'm sitting there in round 23 a month and a half ago, and he's sitting there. I had to take him. Now, he has moved up ADP. I think he's a great 4th running back right now, Matt. I'm all in. Norvell has to win this year, or he's probably going to lose his job in Tallahassee. The best way to do that is protect the quarterback position, run the football, protect your defense. I think Chroma's the guy. I'm all in, Matt. He's either going to show me that I made the right choice or he's going to flop. But here's the thing. He doesn't cost you a lot, and I love him.
And that's the big thing, right? We don't want to be super overexposed on players, but the cheaper the player is, the more willing you are to lean into the risk, right? And
absolutely.
Dwan Williams, John, a bit more expensive. His ADP is 45, but clear reason here why you've got 35% exposure, because we have him ranked over at rookiebigboard.com almost 20 spots above ADP.
Yeah, I really like Dwan Williams. First, the early season schedule is pretty enticing for the Terrapins. I think it's their first 3 games. I think Dwan Williams could be sensational. And then, even if the game script goes away from Maryland, and they're going to be underdogs very likely second half of the season, Matt, he's the pass catching back. He had let me double check. I think he had over 40 receptions last year for Maryland. So he's going to come back this year, and he's going to be involved. He had 45 receptions. I was right. He's going to be involved. If they're winning, it's because Dwan Williams is playing well and getting the ball. If they're behind, he's going to be involved in the passing game. I don't like anyone else on that depth chart. I like Dwan Williams a lot, as evident by 35% of my rosters.
Well, if we're talking cheap running backs, then I have a slide for you, baby. 40% exposure to both Damon June and LJ Phillips. And listen, I have, almost 50% exposure to LJ Martin. I have some of these running backs. And by the way, I have over 50% exposure to King Miller, but that's just because I keep doing Best Ball Mania drafts here with John for the live stream. So I took King Miller out. We talk about him all the time.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about 2 guys that we haven't spent as much time talking about. I know I'm against consensus. I know I'm against narrative here. His ADP is running back 156. We have him ranked low in the hundreds here, John, but man, give me free Damon June all day long. Everything I'm seeing from the Tar Heels beat is that he's running back 1 in this offense, and I thought he looked good with his opportunity last year. On 84 carries, he had 464 yards. He had 2 touchdowns. He had 17 receptions in a limited workload, 160 receiving yards and a touchdown. Now you've got a Bobby Petrino offense that's a lot more up-tempo. Billy Edwards, it seems like, has won the job. They're at least going to be moving the ball. Is this going to be an offense that finds themselves in the red zone a ton? I don't know. Probably not. But the ACC is high scoring, man. Damon June, the Tar Heels, he's going to be working in more space. I have a really hard time believing that he's not going to at least return value on an ADP of 156.
Matt, you've convinced me that he is worth drafting. I just got him in round 20 of the FSGA College Fantasy Football Draft.
Nice.
And in the previous draft before that, I drafted Damon June also. He's basically free, Matt. And he seems to be the starting running back. I agree with you. It's not the most enticing situation, but Matt, give me a starter. I'll take the shot. Let's see how he does.
Yeah. And then I've got LJ Phillips as well out of Iowa. Listen, his ADP is 71. His rookie big board consensus ranking is a bit lower, but I have his ranking higher. So that's the M next to his name. It's running back 64 in my rankings. And that's what's cool about our rankings, John, is you can see it's filtered by yourself and me. But you're looking at LJ Phillips. He's coming over from the FCS. He ran for 1,900 yards, 19 touchdowns. I know Kamari Moulton on paper is the lead running back for Iowa. you're paying much more for Kamari Mullen. Like, he's going 6-7 rounds earlier than LJ Phillips. Iowa rides the hot hand, and they use multiple running backs. We've seen this over and over again, right? There's not necessarily a scheme change. They have downgraded at the quarterback position, right? They're still going through a battle, and to my understanding, a three-way battle at quarterback. John, if you got 3 quarterbacks in late August, brother, you got 0 quarterbacks. Right? So they are going to use both Moulton and Phillips, and I don't think we're going to know who gets the majority of the work until the end of September. But I do think both of these guys can be fantasy relevant, right? And can certainly return value on ADP of 71. So I'm happy to be overexposed on LJ Phillips.
You got me. I drafted him in one of the last 2 drafts also, Matt. He's worth the shot. No question about it.
All right, let's get on to our wide receivers here, John. I like this slide. I don't think we have mentioned either Jordan Faison or Jaden Barnes all off season.
Yeah, and I decided that I wanted to bring up players at wide receiver who we have not mentioned, and I have 40% Jordan Faison. And what happened through this process? Everyone, if you've been listening, I like CJ Carr. I've drafted him a lot also, not as much as the other 2 quarterbacks who I mentioned earlier. And as I'm thinking about it, I have a little side bet on CJ Carr as a Heisman Trophy winner. I think Notre Dame wins 11 games. They might win 12 and run the table. So I kept saying to myself, if we all like CJ Carr, and last I looked, he was like one of the Heisman favorites, Matt, one of the top 3, right?
Oh, yeah.
And they lost a lot of talent in the backfield. Well, if CJ Carr is going to win the Heisman, Matt, he's going to have to throw for 3,500 yards. He's going to have to lead the Fighting Irish to 11 or 12 wins, and he's going to have to throw 30 touchdowns. I mean, he just doesn't. But the media and the bettors have him as the number 1 option. So I kept saying to myself, if he's going to do all that, someone is going to catch the passes. I don't love the tight ends. I think they're interesting, but I'm not in love with them. I kept looking at the Notre Dame depth chart. There's a lot of young talent. There's a lot of talent. But the name that kept sticking out by mid-June was Jordan Faison. Last year, 640 yards, 49 receptions. Matt, they lost their stud wide receiver. He went to the New York Giants, right? I don't see how Jordan Faison doesn't get 90 targets this year. He had 64 targets last year. Absolutely love him this year. And Matt, he's so cheap right now. I mean, I got him again in the SGA draft. I think I got him in round 14. To me, it's a no-brainer. Another player that I looked at as the process, by about mid-April, I looked at Charlotte. Not a great team, a great conference for fantasy numbers. The game script, I think they're going to be behind a lot. Jaden Barnes, Matt, I couldn't believe this. He had 88 targets last year, Matt. 88. My friends, I'm getting almost 100 targets from a player I don't have to draft until around 17, 18. He only had 55 receptions. If they get more efficient at the quarterback position, maybe he gets 100 targets and maybe he moves up to 70 receptions. He had 608 yards, and Matt, I love this. He had 7 touchdowns. Now, they're fickle. I get it. But the 49ers are going to be playing from behind. I love Jaden Barnes, too, and I got 30% of them.
All right, on to my wide receivers here. And I've got a couple of transfers. I'm interested in their new systems here. And the first one up is Yannick Smith. I have 60% exposure.
Oh, my God. I thought I liked Yannick Smith.
I've got a ton of, I just keep, like, he's just hanging around there, you know, at the end of drafts, like round 16, 17. I mean, I just keep finding him very late, especially I've realized in my power 4 formats, it seems like that's where I'm getting him the most. Yeah. But 60% exposure to Smith here. He's transferring over from ECU. He had 44 receptions on 583 yards, 5 touchdowns last year. And then you just look at the offense, right? This is an offense that is going to crank the ball up way more than the Pirates did last year, right? So SMU, they're into huck-it-chuck-it football. They throw it deep. We're going to have to see, the Kevin Jennings of it all, John. If I'm being honest, that makes me a little nervous. But again, for an offense that threw the ball 450 times last year, I think I could get by on that. I think the other thing that's scaring folks off is there are other talented players on this team. You've got Jalen Cropper there. You've got Ymir Knight there. But Smith, for me, playing in that flanker role, like that's a juicy spot in the Rhett Lashley offense here. So I'm willing to go in on him. Again, it's a pretty low price at ADP of 84, and I've got him ranked 15 spots higher than that. And the other guy is Reed Harris here. And Reed Harris, yeah, I've talked about him a ton. If you've watched like my wide receiver preview shows or looking at the 2027 class, like this is somebody I'm just high on as a talent. I've watched Harris's tape at Boston College last year. I've watched Amarian Miller's tape, and this isn't a Devy discussion, John. This is a CFF discussion. But sometimes, being able to watch and break down these guys' tapes, it gives you a better idea of how they're going to be used. Amarian Miller, man, and I know it was Colorado, ton of gadget, ton of short stuff, ton of, winning in the short field. Reed Harris, winning downfield, playing above the rim, stretching things here. I think he's going to be getting the touchdowns. He's got a lower ADP than Amarian Miller right now. I think that's criminal. And I think Reed Harris is absolutely going to come out the better of those two. So if you're choosing an Arizona State wide receiver, for me, it's clearly Harris.
I have a lot of Reed Harris also, my friend. I had to actually cut back my drafting of him a little bit because the numbers got probably around that 25-30% also. And early in the process, I had a lot of Yannick Smith also, my friend. Not sure I'm at the 60, but I like both of those flag plants myself.
I caught up to you. All right, let's get on to the tight ends here. We've definitely talked about Vaname a decent amount, but it's still important to consider this guy, because when you draft your first tight end, and if you're choosing between, Vaname, Wade, Jamari Johnson, right? Like there are options at the top, and 55% of the time, John, you're going with the Iowa tight end.
I am. You know what, Matt? I didn't want to draft him this often, but if I missed out on the big three, now I have Vaname in my big three, but consensus does not. He seems to be about that number 5 or 6 tight end. So if I miss out on the big three, I ended up sitting there in round 7 and 8, Matt, and DJ Vaname sitting there. And I'm looking at ceiling when I want a tight end. And I understand the Hawkeyes offense is not one of those offenses that you're psyched about investing in. However, they have over the years produced extraordinary talent at the tight end position. And I can't get out of my mind his final 2 games last year against Nebraska and Vanderbilt. He scored 18 and 27 fantasy points, Matt. And I've been reading about Iowa over this summer. They also have a very interesting wide receiver that we might be talking about on a waiver wire show coming up.
Ooh.
But DJ Vaname, man, there's quotes like they think he's the best Iowa tight end in the last decade.
Woo.
People are going to be blown away by DJ Vaname. People are saying it might be a little hyperbole. I get that. But the conversation's there. My eyeballs love him. I just think this is a great value, and he's coming. If you don't get those big three, DJ Vaname is the guy I want.
All right. And then Dorian Fleming as well. John, as somebody who used to live in Maryland, man, you're singing to my heart here, doubling down on the Terps.
And it wasn't because of DeJuan Williams that I started thinking about Dorian Fleming. It's because of Malik Washington. And Matt, you and I have discussed Malik Washington throughout this summer. We've drafted him a bunch of times on our underdog teams and when we've been drafting together. And I keep looking at that Maryland wide receiver core. I don't like it, Matt. I think Malik Washington is going to rely on Dorian Fleming and DeJuan Williams in the passing game. Of course, he's going to target wide receivers. But right now, looking at that roster, I don't like any of them. Well, what does that tell me? There's a world in which Dorian Fleming leads the Terrapins in targets. 2 years ago at Georgia State, Matt, he had 79 targets for a tight end at Georgia State. Last year, he moves up to the Big Ten. He has 68 targets. Matt, I'm banking on targets. I like Dorian Fleming a ton.
All right, on to my tight ends here. And starting with our guy, Brett Norfleet. Come on. It had to be some Brett Norfleet talk here on this episode. You know, you're looking at what he did last season, 31 receptions, 254 yards, 5 touchdowns. And John, he's essentially free here. His ADP is tight end 36. We've got him ranked 22 spots above that. I think that he's in a really good spot. And look at the way this Missouri schedule starts the season. Arkansas, Pine Bluff, Kansas, Troy, Mississippi State. Like, this is somebody who is only going to become more valuable here over the first few weeks of the season. I guarantee he's going to be hot on the waiver wire early on, but you can get ahead of it by drafting him literally in the last round. And then I should mention here, I added Walker Lyons. There's a lot of tight ends that I'm in about the 20% range on. And, you know, I have a high exposure to Voname as well. John had him on his slide. So Walker Lyons isn't my most rostered tight end, but he is somebody who I've got 20% exposure to. So a pretty healthy amount. And I do like him above his ADP. My ranking of him is tight end 23. His ADP is tight end 27. The Cougars are going to throw the ball. And they have a ton of vacated production in this offense, right? So Parker Kingston, 67 vacated receptions. Chase Roberts, 54 vacated receptions. Carson Ryan, the tight end, the athletic move tight end, 45 vacated receptions last season, right? So I think that Walker Lyons, who looked good in his first full season as a starter at USC, 20 receptions, 223 yards, 2 touchdowns. And that is in an offense that had Lake McCree, who they really liked at tight end as well. He's in the NFL now. Also, I don't know, John, if you've heard of Mekhi Lemon and Jacoby Lane. You know, so he was battling for targets in the USC offense, and I thought he did pretty well. So I really like what Lyons has shown us. Former high recruit, right? We know he's athletic. We know he's a good pass catcher. It's in an offense where he's going to have the ability to get those targets in that volume. So Lyons, for me, is somebody who I think is a really nice target later on in drafts. John, those are our 8 flag plants, our 16 flag plants, 8 each here. Our final show heading into the 2026 college football season. But again, folks, make sure you're subscribed because we're not going anywhere. A weekly waiver wire show, a weekly plays of the week show, and bonus second plays of the week extended version episode here for all of our Rookie Big Board patrons. If you want access to the CFF rankings as well as Rookie, Devy, Dynasty, get into the Rookie Big Board Discord, full-length articles breaking down the 2027 class from a scouting perspective, so much more over at rookiebigboard.com. And John, the next time we're with you, we're going to be talking actual college football, reacting to the week 0 waiver wire. I absolutely can't wait to get there. Let's get on and get those college fantasy football championships.